Hello, my name is Rebecca, and I'm with the Assistive Technology Center at Little Tennessee Valley Educational Cooperative, and this is Intro to Proloquo2Go. So what is Proloquo2Go? It's an AAC app, and AAC stands for Augmentative and Alternative Communication. That's for iOS, so that means you can use it on your Apple devices like an iPad or an iPhone, but not on Android or Windows. It's a customizable, visually supported communication app that supports users from beginner all the way to advanced. It has more than 25,000 built-in buttons and over 100 text-to-speech natural sounding voices, although some sound more natural than others. And it's used by non-vocal individuals with a range of diagnoses, including those with autism, Down syndrome, and cerebral palsy. And one thing to keep in mind, if you're interested, or a parent or your school is interested in purchasing this app, it does go on sale for 50% off twice a year, once in April and once in October. So keep an eye out for that. So what are we going to go through today? We're going to introduce the basics and learn how to create a user, get oriented to the screen, learn to add, move, customize buttons, create an activity folder, customize, and talk a little bit about what's new and cool with Proloquo2Go. And keep in mind that for the majority of this session, I'm going to actually be in the app demonstrating all of this, but there is a PDF of the PowerPoint presentation that you can reference at any time. So the first thing you have to do is set up your user. If it's the very first time that you have opened the app, it'll automatically bring up the startup wizard. If it's not, then you have to go to add a user. So let's go do that. All right, so I'm on my screen. It's not a brand new app. So in order to add a user, and just so you know, this little square that's moving around, this is Assistive Touch. You're going to see this floating around a little bit. It's not actually part of Proloquo2Go. It's what I'm using so that you can see what I'm pressing on the screen. So you go to this little cog down in the corner, and I already had my users pulled up, but this is the menu that's going to show. You go to User and then Add User. Type in the name of your user. Select the language. I'm going to leave it as English United States, so I'll just hit Next. And I'm going to choose Ella.
Hello, my name is Ella.
Now, when you're choosing a voice, you might need to go through and test out some different voices and spend some time listening to them, and then download the one that you like. And you might even want to download a couple voices, because there are some times where you might want to use a different voice for some different buttons. So don't worry about that right now, but just keep that in the back of your mind that you might end up using more than one voice. So for your vocabulary, Crescendo is the vocabulary that comes with Proloquo2Go, and it is a core-based vocabulary. I recommend starting with that. You can purchase Gateway, but you don't need to do that. So just leave Crescendo checked and hit Next. For the vocabulary level, for almost everyone, you're going to want to start with Intermediate Core. That is a core-based vocabulary that allows for a lot of room for language growth. If you start with Basic, while it is simpler, it doesn't allow for a lot of room for growth. So there are some situations where you might want to use that, where someone just really can't navigate through a lot of folders, and you might want to just stick with Basic. But for the most part, you're going to want to start with Intermediate. And I haven't used Advanced for anyone. I haven't had a need to. But if you do have somebody who's been using it for a long time, you might need to jump to that. Make sure your iPad is oriented the way you want it, although it does go back and forth. Now, the grid size does get a little bit confusing, because we talk about a large grid size and a small grid size. And the reason it gets confusing is because a large grid size has small buttons and a small grid size has large buttons. So the terms get a little conflated sometimes. So this is a 7x11. I would consider this a large grid, but it does get bigger. 96, 112, 128, 144, and that's as large as the grid gets. And as you can see here, the buttons are very small. And then you can take it all the way down. Let's see how low we can go here. To 15. So that's just a 3x5 grid. So this is the smallest grid. So this has the largest buttons. So how do you choose the grid size? You want to have as many buttons visible as possible that your student can see easily and access easily. So if their access method is touch, they need to be able to use one finger to select that button, so they need to be able to see it and touch it with that finger. If they're using eye gaze, the same thing. They need to be able to see it and select it. If it's switch access, the same thing. So you want to choose as large of a grid as you possibly can, so there's more buttons on there that the child can see and access. And don't worry if you aren't sure, make your best guess. You can always adjust it later. You don't have to worry about any of the advanced setup. Just hit next and you're done. So before we move on to a tour of the page, I wanted to go back and discuss the core vocabulary concept really fast. In case you're not familiar with core vocabulary, core words are what make up about 80% of everything that we say. And so those words are the focus of the vocabulary that is on the screen. And those words stay in the same place, and so that helps with motor memory, which helps expand communication faster. So if you think about like the apps on your phone, if they get moved around, you suddenly can't find them. Your thumb is moving. It's not where you expect it to be. So if we keep those core words in the same place and then move the fringe vocabulary around it, and the fringe vocabulary is usually setting specific or activity specific, like if you're playing with bubbles or you're doing a book or you went to the movies. Those are words that have specifically to do with those activities, but you're still going to need core words everywhere. And so that's why it's important to keep those core words at the focus of the vocabulary. And just to review the grid size, because it's confusing, remember, large grid size has small buttons, small grid size has large buttons. You want to go as large as possible that the student can still see and access. So now we're going to take a tour of the screen. So at the very top of the screen is the message bar right here. In order to get anything up into the message bar, you hit buttons.
I need this.
And then in order to say what you type, you have to actually touch the message bar.
I need this.
Until you do that, you haven't said the sentence. Once you do say the sentence, you can start typing again, and whatever is up there will delete.
It is good.
So that automatically deleted. Now, I haven't said this sentence yet because I haven't gone up into the message bar. So if I type another one, if I push another button,
Stop.
It just adds to it. In
Need.
order to delete that, I would go to the X. Once just goes back one time, it deletes, and then twice clears the whole message bar. Right below the message bar is this top menu right here. In the center, it tells you what page you're on. So right now we're on the home page. So let's go down to activities, and now we're on the activities page. And over here on the left, you can see it says, or partially says home. It'll take us back home. It always takes you back up to the next level. So if we go down to a subfolder, now we're in playground. That's the page we're on. And this arrow now takes us back up to activities, which would then take us back home. So that always eventually leads you back home. In order to go home directly, you would just use this home button right in the center of the bottom menu. Anytime you type anything into the message bar, over here on the right hand side, this little square with the arrow pops up, and that's how you can send messages. You can send them like text messages, email messages. You can save them. That's particularly good if you're dealing with a preteen or a teenager. It's something you set up ahead of time. We're not going to go over that because it's more a more advanced topic, but I just wanted you to be aware of what that symbol meant. So right next to the home button on the bottom menu is the keyboard. And if you open it up, so I already had a message in there. If you open it up, it'll pull up whatever keyboard you have programmed in. So this, I think, is just the Apple keyboard. So there's a Proloquo2Go keyboard, an Apple keyboard. You can use any kind of keyboard you want to download, a Bluetooth keyboard that's not on screen, anything that you like. And you can type in any message. The dog is barking.
The dog is barking.
So I typed it. As soon as I hit the period, it spoke, or you can hit speak.
The dog is barking.
And then if you hit insert, it will go up to the message bar and be symbolated.
The dog is barking.
So if you want to symbolate anything, that's a really good way to do it. And another great feature, because I'm using this keyboard, I have the mic.
Mic, and it will say whatever I am saying.
So that's just another great access method. To the left of the keyboard on the bottom menu are 4 little squares. And that is your tools pop-up. So these first 4 on your tools pop-up have to do with whatever is in the message bar. So copy will copy what's in the message bar if you need to paste it somewhere. And clear will get rid of everything in the message bar. Delete will go back 1, just the same as this little symbol over here. Add is a really neat feature. So if something is in there that you want to add as a button, this gives you a really quick way to do it. You hit add, and then it pops up. You can choose a symbol, and done. And now my new symbol is right down here in the corner.
The dog is barking.
And there you go. The next row has search, typing, and recents. Recents is great to see what has been said. So if someone is bringing their device back and they're saying, oh, yes, we've been using it all weekend long, you can look and see what actually has been said. This keeps track of it, so you can scroll through and see what's been said. Typing brings up the exact same keyboard as what's on the toolbar. And search is great because, like I said, there are thousands of buttons and it is impossible to remember where they all are. So in order to find what you're looking for, you just type it in and it will show you how to find it. So I put in dog. Do I want dog, hot dog, that brand new button that I just made? I think I want a dog bone, and it shows me dog bone is under things, and it just walks you through it. Animals, more, pets, more, dog bone. Now I never would have found that. So if there's something you're looking for, use your search button. Below that are the volume buttons. Those are pretty self-explanatory. Most of the time you're going to want it on loud. Shout is great in certain situations, but not all the time. And explore is a great feature, and we're going to talk about that later. That has to do with progressive vocabulary. And that is a way for the student to explore all the vocabulary that's in Proloquo2Go with no limits. So we'll get into that later. So the remaining tools at the bottom of the toolbar are the little pencil, which is the edit button. That's where you go to customize your buttons and folders. And then to the right of that is a small cog that is options. It was formerly known as settings, so you'll hear it called that too. So options is where you go to do pretty much everything. It's where we went to add our user. You can change the appearance, vocabulary, your access method. So let's take a look at options. If you go down to the cog in the lower right-hand corner and click it, the first thing you're going to see is that green question mark with help. And the main takeaway from this whole training is to know where to go for help. That's where you go. If you click on that, it brings up the Proloquo2Go help overview, which is pretty much everything that they have online. There's a few things where you do have to go online to get answers, but for the most part, everything is in here. And it's not just text, it's also video tutorials. So say you wanted to find a button, we went over that earlier, you can't remember how you're supposed to do that. You can put search, button, and it pops up, search for a button, and it tells you exactly how to do it. There's a tutorial video that you can watch and a full tutorial with pictures showing you exactly what to do to find a button. I use this all the time because I have to use a lot of different AAC programs and I can't remember where to go to find things in every single one of them. So I rely on that. Below that is user, and we use this when we set up our new user, but all the users that you have set up on your device, you can switch between them. So if you're a teacher using a device for multiple students or an SLP and you're using it for maybe a group lesson and you want to have it set up differently, it only takes a second to switch between users. So we can switch back and forth and it just takes a second. So appearance, and I apologize, I can't use my assistive touch for this part because it doesn't allow me to scroll easily. So I know you can't see exactly where I'm touching, but I'm going to try to make it clear. So the first one is appearance. So you have to think of appearance in sections. So the first one says message window. If I scroll down, then it tells me it's toolbar. So everything in that section is going to affect the appearance of toolbars. The view is the main screen. Buttons is the appearance of the individual buttons. And then symbols is the appearance of the symbols within those buttons. And then below that is typing view. So if we're looking at the message window, at the top of the screen, I can click and just get rid of it completely. Or I can change the size of it. And then you can also, under advanced options, you can change the background color, your font, if you want the text above or below the symbol, or if maybe you just want text and not a symbol. Maybe you're working on literacy and you want them to have that visual support on the buttons, but you just want the words at the top. So you can decide how you want that message window to work for you or just get rid of it entirely. Below that is toolbars, and remember those two black toolbars at the top and the bottom. You can change the size of those to ridiculously large and large, medium, and small. I like to keep them small. The show folder image is just that little, if you look at home in the center there, it's popping on and off. It's just that little picture. So for view, this affects the whole screen here where the buttons are. And remember I said that you weren't locked into your grid size. This is where you can change your grid size. So if you realize maybe you didn't go large enough or you went too large, you can go through and you can change your grid size. You're not locked in. So if I'm like, 60 is a little much, let's go down, it'll take me down automatically. In the advanced options, you can change the background color and the button spacing so that you can make the look completely different. So maybe you need a little bit more visual discrimination between the buttons. So we can make it black, red, yellow. Those are really common when you're looking at high contrast. And then you can change the spacing. Right now it's very compact. Those buttons are very close together. It can be easy to hit a button next to another. You can spread those out But remember, the looser you make that spacing, the smaller that button is getting. So keep that in mind. And this might be one of those situations where you decide you need to change the grid size. Maybe you realize you need to spread out those buttons more, and in so doing, you need a smaller grid size because the buttons were getting too small. So I just changed the appearance completely of this screen, just altering the button spacing and the background color. So for the buttons, now we're looking at the individual buttons. Do you want to have the image and the label, the image only, or the label only? Most people like to have both, but you might have reason to use one or the other. For the color coding, I have it set on modified Fitzgerald key. That's what I like. What that means is it changes the color of the border of the button based on the part of speech, basically. So if you look, you can see the pronouns have orange, the verbs are pink, the WH question words are in black, prepositions are in green, and it just changes based on that. There's also Gateway, which is similar, and Fitzgerald, the original Fitzgerald, which is also similar. If you don't like those, you can do your own custom setup. That's not a problem. The background color here, now remember we're talking about the buttons, so this is the background color of the buttons. Most of the time you're going to want white, but you can change it if you want to. Border color, again, we have it set to the Fitzgerald color code, but you can make them all red. You know, if you like that uniformity or that works best for the student, you can do that. The label position, if you want it above or below the image. Multi-line labels, if it's something long and you want to have multiple rows of words. And then you can even change the width. So you can have it very thick or barely there. And you can also change your font. And then down below the button level is the symbol level itself. And the one thing you can alter with the symbols is skin tone. So right now it's light, but you can change it to medium or dark and just have it match your user. And then below that is the typing, and that's just going to affect when we were using the keyboard, what size and color and font you want that text to be. So below appearance is vocabulary, and we originally set this to intermediate core, and again, if you get into this and change your mind, you can always change it here. The home folder is just what you want to be the home folder. You can choose any folder at all to be your home folder. Normally, just best to leave that alone. Progressive language. So say your student can easily see and access this 6x10 grid that I have right now, but they are not ready for all of these buttons. You can go to progressive language, and this shows the buttons slowly. So if you go to step 1 of progressive language, it's only going to show a few of those buttons, and then 2 shows a few more, etc. The larger the grid, the more steps there'll be in your progressive language. It goes all the way to 10 for a really large grid. If you have a very small grid, there just might be 1 or 2 steps involved. The folders down at the bottom here of the screen, those are still there. Those you have to manually show or not show depending on what you want to do. This is just about the word buttons. So now if you have this progressive language set to step 1, but you still want to allow the student to explore all of the words and language that's on the device, because no one is only focusing on 10 words all day every day for everything. Sometimes you need to explore other languages. So in order to do that, remember our tool pop-up over here in the left hand corner. If you go there and you hit explore, that little eyeball, that opens up all of the buttons. So you can let them spend time just exploring language, and you're not doing focused language learning. And then you just hit the eyeball and they're gone again. So right below vocabulary, we have speech and language, and that's where you can change the voice if you'd like to change it. You can also change the speech rate, how fast or slow your voice speaks, or you can change the pitch. So under personalization, you can make it deeper or higher. There's also a secondary voice, and that comes into play with grammar. So grammar is the next menu, and right now we don't have any grammar support on. So if I want to say I am good, I can type
I is good.
but that's not what I wanted to say. I wanted to say I am good. In order to do that, I can turn on grammar support, and this is very good if you're starting to get into grammar with your student. I wouldn't do this at the beginning. So if I want to do this, you'll notice that all these little kind of triangles appeared in many of the buttons. That tells you there's a pop-up menu. And what that pop-up menu is your grammar support. So now I'm going to try to write this again.
I.
But this time when I hit is, I'm going to hold the button down. And that brings up the pop-up menu. If you want to preview your options first, you hit this preview button, and if it's green, that means you're in preview mode. So what that is like auditory scanning or auditory cueing, so the student can listen to the different options without selecting them.
Being, was, am.
That's the one I wanted. And if you'll notice, the voice was different. That's that secondary voice. So what it means is that's not the student speaking, that's them listening to choices and deciding. And if you want to select it, you just hit am. If you don't have preview on, whatever you hit is what you select.
Am good.
I am good. And that's what I wanted to say. Prediction just applies to the keyboard, and it's just like the text prediction that you use on your phone. Access method. So direct access is touch. And you have some options here that can be helpful. So right now, if I hit a button and let go, it speaks. I can make that duration a little bit longer so that I have to hold the button longer, which slows the student down a little bit if they like to push buttons repeatedly.
Put.
So if I just hold the button for a second, you can see the buttons are moving, but they're not speaking. Because if I really want to say it, I've got to keep that finger down just a little bit longer.
Stop.
And now it will speak. And that also applies to these menu options. So remember that if you're trying to get in and it's not letting you, if you have this on, you have to hold that for a little bit longer. Select on release is a good option if you have a student who maybe they have other fingers that are on the screen at the same time. While they maybe can select a button, they might have an extra finger that gets in the way and can confuse things. So when you configure this, you can do first finger up or first finger down. And I would try them out to see what works best in your situation.
Put stop.
So if I have this on, I'm going to select a couple buttons, and there's red rings around the button my finger's on. And when I release the first button,
Go.
that's the one that's going to speak. And the other one that I was also touching isn't going to do anything. And then for switch access, if you turn that on, you can set your settings for scanning, whatever kind of scanning you're going to be using with your switches. Interaction is also another great place to go if you've got a student who likes to hit buttons repeatedly or play what's in the message window repeatedly. So this first section applies to the message window. And right now we have it set to auto clear whenever you play that message. You can get rid of that if you don't like that. You can also you can adjust what's done when you hit that message bar, if you want it to restart or stop, or what you want it to do with that speech. Or you can even set a delay so they can't keep hitting it over and over and over again. They'll have to stop hitting it for a certain amount of seconds before it will play again. The one that probably you're going to like the most is on down, and it is the buttons. So right now, it allows repeating of buttons. If you turn that off, You can't hit the same button twice in a row. So you have to hit a different button first. So it's sort of helpful in that if I'm hitting need, that button is locked. I can't hit that button. I can't do anything with that button until I hit something else.
Put. Need.
Now I can. The problem is that you can just end up with this.
Take. 4. Take. 4. Take. 4.
As long as they go back and forth, it's not a problem. So what you can do is a delay. You can put a delay where you have to wait a second where you're not tapping that button repeatedly or however much time you set it for, and then that button is active again. So if I set that for a second and I hit go, I'm repeatedly hitting go and nothing is happening because I have to leave that button alone for a second before it's going to be active again.
Go.
Now it is. So you can set a delay if you have someone who repeats over and over and over and over and over again, and that can maybe slow that down just a little bit. If you have you're trying to keep someone out of these things down in the bottom toolbar, you can hide them. So you can hide your edit mode, keyboard, home button if you need to. The one you can't hide is the one we're in right now, which is options. What you can do is lock it with a password. So if you turn that on, you can select a password, and that's how you would get into options. The best thing to do usually is to use iPad's built-in guided access, but this is another option for you. For services, you're going to want to set up a way to back everything up, and that's so important. You don't want to lose everything. So as soon as you set up a user, you want to make sure that information is being backed up somewhere. So you can create a Dropbox account for free. You can also create a Gmail account, and every Gmail account is tied to a Google Drive. So it can even be, Proloquo2Go backup at abcschool@gmail.com, and you just send every single backup for everybody to that drive, or a parent can set it up for their child, whatever works best for the situation. Just make sure that you have that set up. And so backup is what I was just talking about, right? You've set up your service, and now you want to make sure that it's automatically backing up, or if you've made a whole bunch of changes and you want to make sure to export that backup, or if something's happened, someone made changes and you need to restore from backup, this is where you would go to do that. Okay, so the last icon is that pencil, which is edit. And that's where you're going to spend all your time when you are creating and moving buttons and folders. When you hit that button, a lot happens on the screen. So I'm going to go through the slides to familiarize you with everything you're going to see before we hop over to the app. So at the top of the screen, in that top toolbar, over on the right-hand side, you're going to see 3 little icons, a 1, a 2, a file drawer, and then the little options gear that we're used to, and done. And 1 and 2 and file drawer are just page 1, page 2 of whatever page that you're on. Okay, so that little more arrow that shows up and you can go to a secondary page, that's what 2 is. And then that file drawer is storage. So anything in there still exists and you can play around with it in edit mode, but it's not going to be available whenever you're actually using the app. Only what's in 1 and 2 is available. The little gear icon, it is options, but it's a really small version where you can just change the grid size and the vocabulary. And then done gets you out of edit mode. At the bottom of the page, the Edit Center pulls up. And at the top of the Edit Center are a whole lot of little blue icons. So just working from left to right, there's a little check mark that will select every button on the page. So whatever you're doing is going to apply to all of those buttons. If you just want to select one button or 2 buttons, just select those with your finger, just hit them, and you'll know they're selected. My microphone just fell. You'll know they're selected because they'll have a little check mark on the individual buttons. If you want to deselect everything, hit the little symbol with the check mark with the slash through it. And then you have the symbols for copy and paste, and then the little trash can for delete. And when you hit that, it's going to ask you if you want to delete it permanently, or basically if you want to just put it into that little storage folder. Moving on, we're seeing the same things again that we saw up at the top, the 1, 2, and storage, and that's exactly the same as what's at the top of the page. The next one alphabetizes the buttons from A to Z. I don't see a whole lot of use for that. I don't think I've ever used it. And then the little circular arrows is swap, and you use that to switch buttons. So if you have 2 buttons selected, you can hit swap and they'll change places. And then besides that, the 2 arrows going different directions is for import, export. So below that top menu, you'll see 3 other icons. The main one is that little caret there that will expand and collapse that edit menu. Sometimes you need to just collapse that menu and take a look at the screen to see what it is exactly that you want to do, and then you need to pull it back up again. And the next one, the button folder, people get tripped up on this a lot because they'll think that they're editing a button, but they're really in folder, or vice versa. So just make sure it's actually selected to what you're wanting to edit, button or folder. And then finally, another green question mark, and that's great. As soon as you hit it, all of these buttons get labels put on them. Although I find them kind of small and I'm half blind, but there's labels on all of them so you can see what they are. Hopefully you can see better than me. When you look at the actual screen, the buttons look different. If it's got a little green T on it, that means it's a template button and you can't do anything to it. If it's part of the template, it stays there. You can't alter it. If it's got a little star there, it's a placeholder. So it's going to say, oh, if it's a noun or a pronoun or a verb, you can really put whatever you want there, but that's sort of a guide to help you along when you're filling out your pages. And then you'll see the buttons that you've created. Okay, so let's take a look at what it's like to edit a screen. I'm going to go to food, and I'm going to go to edit mode and move some buttons around and do some things. So I'm hitting the pencil, and now everything has changed. So if you look at the top, that top menu has changed, and everything at the bottom has popped up and looks different. That little caret, I can lower it and raise it, and then I can switch between button and folder because I can edit this whole folder. I can change the icon for the page. I can change the name of the page, but is that what I'm trying to do, or am I actually wanting to edit some buttons on the page itself? So just make sure that's where you need it to be. So the first thing I'm going to do is move some buttons around on this page to the different locations. So I'm going to hit 2, and this is what's on my second page. But you know what? I love donuts a whole lot, and I really want donuts to be on my first page. So I selected donuts. It's got a little check mark there. And then I'm going to hit the little arrow and 1, so it'll move it to the first screen. So now let's go back to the first screen. And donut should be there. So there it is. And let's say, you know what? I don't want any fruit on here. I need to get rid of the fruit. We need to be extra healthy and just keep junk food on here. Let's move that banana all the way to storage. So I'm going to select the banana, and then I'm going to do the arrow to storage down here in the menu. Let me put on my assistive touch so you can see what I'm doing. So I selected banana, and then I'm going to hit this, and now if we go over to the storage, the banana is there. Looks like I've moved banana a few times. Okay, so if I want to swap, so say I would like to swap that juice box and ketchup. So I'm going to select those 2, and then I'm going to go over here to swap and swap them. And now they've changed places.
Pretzel.
If I would like to create a button, this little icon right here is where you create any of your buttons or folders. So just hit the plus sign and everything pops up for you to add anything you want. So say I want to add chocolate because I love chocolate, right? That's one of my favorite things to eat. Once you do that, I have to get rid of that because I need to scroll a little bit. You can select which picture you would like. It gives you lots of options. You can add more. So if you hit the edit button under the picture, you can choose from any of the symbols. So you can scroll through here and choose any of their symbols. You can search for chocolate and it'll bring up all the different options you have. Or say it's a very specific chocolate bar, you can go to your own pictures, and if you have a picture of your chocolate bar that you've taken, you can add it. Or you can go ahead, if you've got it in front of you, take a picture right now and it will pull up your camera, which obviously that was not chocolate, that was a laptop. And then you can adjust your label. So right now it's chocolate. If I wanted to say chocolate, I can record or edit the pronunciation. If I say it a little differently, I can record. Chocolate, yummy. Chocolate, yummy. And that's what the button will say when it's pressed. Chocolate, yummy. Or you can go in and add sound effects. So I want to say yummy, but I don't want to use my recording. This little symbol besides the microphone, that is like a text bubble with a plus sign in it, you can find all kinds of great sound effects in here. So for animals, emotions, all kinds of things, and there's even an So now when I play this,
Chocolate.
so now I have a great sound effect. And to make that even better, I can change the voice. So you can personalize it in all sorts of different ways. So you can add your own picture, you can record it, you can put sound effects to it. And just like in the options menu, you can change the background color. You know, this is very important chocolate for me, so I want to highlight this button. I can change the border of my chocolate button. You can change the visibility here, so you can dim it or hide it completely. So if there's something that you've created that you need to hide it, it's not a problem. And this is really fun. So even though our default speech is Ella, I can change that for certain buttons, which makes it really fun if you're going to use different characters, if you have different books or anything fun. So instead of using the default, I'm going to use the little
chocolate.
So now that button is very special. Below that is the word kind. So this goes into that grammar. It will affect, if you have it set on the Fitzgerald, it'll affect the color of the border, and it'll also affect those grammar supports. So right now it's set as a phrase, but if I changed it to something else, it would change the border and it would change the function of that button to an adjective. If you want to create a folder, it's the same process, but you just hit the folder side of that button and you can create a whole new folder. Or what I do all the time is link to an existing folder, because there are a ton that come preloaded. So that usually makes it a lot easier to start with something they already have. I'm going to link to an existing folder, and there's just zillions of them. As you can see here, I'm just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and there's so many. So I'm going to link to one that I've made called a pizza snack, and this is a little pizza snack activity. So now in my food folder, I have it linked to my activity about a pizza snack. So let's see what we've done here.
Chocolate. Mmm.
All right, so we've moved buttons around from the different pages and put them into storage, and then also swapped them on the page, created a button and added a voice to it and a sound effect, and altered the look of the button and linked to an existing folder. So if I hit that, this is what comes up.
Get ingredients. Sauce on bagel.
So it's my instructions for my pizza snack activity. You can also, of course, create a brand new folder for anything that you need. So now we're going to work on creating a new folder. And remember, folders are for any activities like bubbles or playground or books. It can be reading in general or a very specific book. It can be places that the student goes to in the school, like gym, or outside of school, like the grocery store. So any places or activities make great folders. So we're going to hit the folder side of this button and select New Folder. And what's going to pop up are templates. I'm going to scroll past these user templates. Those are things we've made, to the ones that you're going to see. The reason that the templates are important is because, remember, Proloquo2Go, that crescendo vocabulary is based on core vocabulary. And it's important that those words are available as much as possible and in the same position as possible. So this allows for them to have access to those same words in the same spots in these new folders that you're creating. So it's good to scroll through and find the thing that best reflects the folder that you're creating. For us, since we're in the food folder, probably I'll just stick with food and hit next. And I think because we're all at home for COVID-19, I'm going to put food delivery. As my new folder. And I don't really like that picture, so I'm going to edit it. I'm going to choose a symbol, and I'm going to look for delivery and see what options we have here. I like that pizza delivery guy. I'm going to go with that, and I'm going to hit done. And now I have a new folder for food delivery. Now, if I do any more editing right here, what I'm editing is that folder button. And that's not really what I want to do. I want to get into the folder to edit. In order to do that, I'm going to double tap on the food delivery. And that's going to open up that new folder. So when I open up this new folder, you'll see all those little T's. Those are part of the template, and those are things that I can't change or get rid of. So those stay. What I want to do is I want to add some delivery restaurants, right? So I would hit the plus button to add a button. And I'm going to write Pizza Hut. And the logo pops up. That's what I'm going to select. And that button is done, right? So we've already got that. I can go along here and put all the places where we could get food delivery on this page. You can also alter what you want this page to look like. So remember this, let me pull this up. Remember this button and folder? This is very important. So right now we're working on buttons, but if we want to work on the whole folder, we need to switch to folder. Okay, so now we're looking at the folder. You can change the picture and the name. Let me get rid of this now because I need to scroll. And then I don't know if you noticed, but on that that example one I did, it looked very different. The reason is it was in a list view, and list view is really great when you're doing something that has steps. So if you have, say, steps to hand washing or anything like that, you can put it in list view, and that really helps to put everything vertically in order. So I can change the background color and I can change the speech and all of these things that you can change in appearance on this folder. And that's all you have to do to create a folder. So I'm going to talk briefly about something that's new and cool in the world of Proloquo2Go, and that is using split screen. And being able to use split screen is particularly helpful if you're having to do teletherapy or distance learning. That way you can have everything you need up on the same screen at the same time. So you're not flipping back and forth and having long pauses while you're trying to pull things up. Just a word of warning, it doesn't work with every single iPad. It might not work with an older one, with an older version of iOS. Also, apps have to work in split screen, and not every one of them does. So basically, if there's one you want to use, you just have to try it out and see if it's going to work. In order to do split screen, all you do is pull up your little menu at the bottom, grab a hold of that icon, and just move it onto the screen. And you see how it's getting bigger? And now that's moving over, and then it snaps into place. You can also adjust, make things bigger or smaller, which is really helpful if you're going back and forth. That makes going back and forth easier, just making things bigger and smaller. So I'm going to go to this book, Sammy. And if you are not familiar with Rivet, it's free. It's from Google, and it is fantastic. It provides tons of free books at different levels, and most of them have a lot of reading supports built into the books. So it is a great app. So say that we're working on the word like. That's our core word that we're focusing on. So this story called Sammy focuses on that word. So now when I'm reading it, I have the opportunity to model the word like while I'm reading it. So Sammy likes to play. Do you like to play? Sammy likes to run. I don't like to run. I like to walk. Do you like to run? It looks like Sammy's getting in trouble for running all over the house. Sammy likes to hide. What happens when you hide? So now you have the opportunity to pull up games or books or anything and have a split screen available so that you can focus on those core words that you want to focus on. So thank you very much, and please feel free to contact me. My name is Rebecca Hoffman, and I'm at Little Tennessee Valley Educational Cooperative. You can contact me at RebeccaHoffman@ltvec.org. I'm always happy to help if you have any questions. Thank you very much, and please go through this video slowly and work through all the examples so that you're able to do it on your own. Feel free to rewind, watch again, pause, take your time until you're comfortable doing things. Thank you very much, and have a great day.